Alright, Christian women. In your New Testament, aka the back of the book, in Luke 1:72, we're told that the Messiah is going to come and perform the mercy and remember the Holy Covenant. So what Holy Covenant would that be? If you go to Deuteronomy 4:13, you're going to see that it's the Ten Commandments before the law was added. That's the law that Paul's talking about in Galatians 3. The law in Colossians 2, the handwritten ordinances that were put in the side of the Ark of the Covenant. But where were the 2 tablets of stone that had the 10 Commandments etched with God's own finger? They were inside the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark represents the heart. We're not to have the sacrificial law in our heart. It was a witness against Israel for their transgression of the 10 Commandments. And most of the sacrificial law is a riddle. And it just expounds on keeping the 10 Commandments. Just shows you in more detail how to keep the 10 Commandments. It goes into more... it's kind of like... The commandment was, thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not have any sexual deviance. And commit adultery to your partner and things like that. But then in the law, because there was so much depravity, they have to specifically be told not to lie with animals, or not to lie woman with woman and man with man. So there's things like that. But then you've also got, in the Torah movement, people go into the letter of the law. They go into the letter of the sacrificial law instead of taking the spirit of what it means. So when you keep the 10 Commandments, the Holy Covenant that the Messiah came to remember, Luke 1, New Testament, the Messiah came to remember the Holy Covenant, you start keeping the 10 Commandments. You receive the spirit of truth, so that when you read the law, you can use it lawfully. That's what Paul's talking about. And using it lawfully means you're taking it to the spirit. So when you say, don't mix wool with linen, that doesn't mean you can't wear a mixed fabric, or that it's sinful to do so. It's talking about the pagan garments, and the way that you even interpret that is when you look through scripture and you read line upon line. And you'll see that there's who is it? I can't remember who it was. But they coveted the pagan garments, the pagan priest's garments, that were made of wool. And you're not to blend that. You're not to blend the traditions of the heathen with the ways of God. And look at what the church is doing. Jeremiah 10. Don't learn the ways of the heathen. Don't bring a tree into the house and decorate it and fasten it to the floor. But they've done just that. Because they're blending wool and linen. They're doing the ways of the heathen. So ironically, they're saying we're no longer under the law. They're the ones that are actually breaking the basic 10 Commandments. But if you look into the sacrificial law, you're going to see that it expounds. It's like a spiritual riddle of how to keep the 10 Commandments. But the Torah movement, because they don't have faith and they're not born again, because they're not truly trying to obey God, they're like in a panic. They won't love God and neighbor in spirit and truth. They go to the letter. They do these outward things. So they do outward acts of righteousness, but their hearts are full of covetousness. So they're not keeping the 10 Commandments. Just like the Pharisees, they focus on the tithe of anise and mint and cumin. They focus on the sacrificial law, but they leave off the weightiest matter of the law: judgment, mercy, faith, which is judging and rebuking according to the 10 Commandments. As well, you've got Paul in Ephesians 2 that talks about these covenants of promise. In Luke 1:72, we're told the Messiah is going to come and remember the Holy Covenant. In Acts 3, we're told about the times of refreshing, which is the first coming, and the times of restitution, which is the second coming. When Paul's talking about the new covenant in Hebrews 8, he's quoting Jeremiah 31, which has just... The context of Jeremiah 31 is following the second Exodus, which is after... The second Exodus is during Great Tribulation. But the new covenant, the context is after the Exodus, after Great Tribulation, when they're dwelling in safety. Israel and Judah, the 2 houses, have been made one again. They're dwelling in safety in New Jerusalem, and the new covenant is made. We're in the times of refreshing. That's the refreshing of the 10 Commandments. That means you need to keep the 10 Commandments, be born again in spirit, and teach others to do so. Because in doing so, you are building the kingdom, because the kingdom is spiritual. You need to set your, how is it worded? You need to focus on heavenly goods, the heavenly treasures. This is his people. That's why he says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and then all things will be added unto you. It's about realizing, oh my goodness, God has shown me to keep his covenant, and now I have the spirit of truth, and I know what that feels like. And it's because of keeping this amazing covenant that separated Israel from the rest of the world. Now we are grafted into the commonwealth of Israel by keeping this covenant of promise. That's what Paul's talking about in Ephesians 2. So we're no more Gentiles. I want to pass that on to my neighbor. That's focusing on heavenly treasures, because God's treasures is his people. And if you actually do that, you truly love God and neighbor, and he will reveal the meat and due season to you. Because the Messiah says he only reveals the meat and due season to those who watch. Watching is an idiom for loving your neighbor. Ezekiel 2:3-33. Blowing the trumpet, telling people, return to the covenant before the Messiah returns, so that you can be part of the kingdom. Now pass it on.